It's crazy.
Like 3 times a week they gave you free coffee.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea. Especially that girl Anne when she's
I know, right? I'm just praying it doesn't shut off. Because it did it to me as we were getting ready. Jack, you can go to YouTube and check it out. Adam Emanuel's YouTube channel. You can go to the Adam Emanuel page.
Set up the
No, I just need to go. No, I do not shut off. That's what I was trying to figure out how to.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Thank you so much. Just make sure your phone's off too.
I ran out of time. I'm not trying to be so. I saw an example here.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
And welcome to another beautiful outdoor Shabbat worship at Addis Emmanuel. We're so delighted you could be here in person and those who are able to be here through the blessing of technology. We are going to begin our Shabbat worship on one with Amen. Continue now with the lighting and blessing of our Shabbat candles, which you can find in the middle at the of page 1, and our Kiddush. And it's our pleasure to welcome Lily and Crowley to come forward to lead us in these blessings. finally, our Shabbat pride with Dodi. about an expression of our love, commanding us to love God, which is a very hard thing to do. How do you command somebody to have a feeling? We express this feeling through mitzvot, through not how we feel so much as things we do. And can you imagine the love that our people must have felt, the love for God, when we crossed through the sea and we were truly free from Egyptian slavery? We turn to page 4 as we sing with joy, Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha nehtar b'kodesh, Torah tehilot osei peleh, Torah tehilot osei peleh. Malechut ekara uvanecha, Bokeyayim livnei Moshe uMiriam, Ze'elianu ve'amru, Ze'elianu ve'amru, Adonai le'olam va'ed, Adonai le'olam va'ed. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeis sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Et shamru b'nei Yisrael, et Shabbat Shabbat. Et shamru b'nei Yisrael, et Shabbat Shabbat. La'asot et Shabbat le'dorotav
רבים, צומת נופלים ונופי חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, כשני עבר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך מביט ומחיה, ומשביע ישועה, נאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
We continue in the middle of page 7. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, v'kadesh haShabbat.
Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki ata hu mecharon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu mecharon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rab al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rab al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. B'tov b'necha limarei et amcha Yisrael, b'chol עת ובכל שעה לשלומך. Shalom Rab al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rab al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam.
We turn our thoughts and prayers now to those who are in need of healing, whether it is a healing of the body or healing of the spirit. And if you're watching us through the blessing of technology and want to add the names of those you're thinking of at this time who are in need of healing, please feel free to add those names in the chat. And I'm going to add some names here in our extended added family. And if you have a name that you would like to add, please stand after the names are read so that we can offer our prayers of healing to them as well. We're thinking especially of Sarah Drasnin, Coco Aguilar, Jonathan Shapiro, Ron Fisher, Jeff Schaefer, Lulu Ruguela, Marion Wirtz, Aaron Tepper, Lily Tepper, Joan Major, Karen Bowen, Louis Alahut, Mary Parker, Barbara Cohn, Tricia Tepper, Jordan Maverick Steinberg, Carol Schaefer, Harriet Rosenberg, Hudson Hodge, Carrie Basin, Dr. Jerry Herman, Todd Pollard, Murray Kammerman, Mary Mednitsky, Jocelyn Jackson, Jen Jones, Shirley Friedlander, Michael Infante, Gary Garnick, Sarah Oken, Ann Marsden, Jerry Dreskin, Lynn Romsberg, Rick Ulrich, Ileana Cohn, and other names we'd like to add at this time. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. We continue our prayer now silently. Let's try that together. Repeat after me. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock, my redeemer. Adonai Tsuri this week, as Sandy and I were preparing for tonight's service, she pointed out that part of the Via Hafta is in this week's Torah portion. I was saying, well, wasn't that last week? And she said, no, it's this week. And we were both right. It's the more traditional versions of Via Hafta that we find this week. And what we know from our Reform Siddur, our Reform prayer book, was in last week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion being Akev. And the word V'ahavta means you shall love. We're commanded to love God. But when I think of the word V'ahavta, the root is ahava, is love. And it's not just the love that we have for God, but I think of ahava, of love expressed in a variety of different ways. We have love of God, we have love of Torah, yes, and then there's love between people. There's love of things. As storyteller, puppeteer extraordinaire Marilyn Price says, the love that makes you smile with excitement and shiver with delight. Ahava, love, is often the centerpiece of many a story. Now, on a personal note, this was the first Shabbat since I came to New Jersey that I was able to bake challah. Well, I've been here at Addis since July 1st. We only moved into our house in the very end of July and received all our belongings and furniture at the beginning of August. And so slowly we're finding all those things that are in all those boxes, and they're not all unpacked, but enough was unpacked and we were able to buy the ingredients, and I was able to bake my first challah in our new home. And our daughter just came home from camp. She was at a sister camp to Harlem, Azrui in Wisconsin, and so it was really quite lovely to be together as a family for this first Shabbat with homemade challah. Full disclosure, I use a bread machine, but I'm happy to share the recipe. So with these sentiments of ahava, love, and the making of challah, I want to share with you this story called as by Marilyn Price, that storyteller, author, and educator extraordinaire. Once upon a time, there was a little boy, and he lived with his mom and dad, his parents, his grandma, his grandpa, his grandparents. He lived with his brothers, his sisters, his siblings, and cousins, and he lived with everyone who took care of them in a place they called the palace. You see, this boy's father was the king, and this boy was the oldest. So one day, he himself would become the king. And he was trained to be a king in many, many different ways, but his favorite training was in the kitchen with grandma. The training took place on Fridays, and it was called challah baking. But it wasn't just about baking, it was about the stories that they would listen to from each other. He would tell her stories about his day and his week, and she told him stories about his father, the king, when the king was a boy, and as he grew older, and during his kingship. Well, the boy loved these stories, and one of the things he wanted to know was how he would be as good a king as his father was. And so his grandma told him through story. She told him to remember to take care of his people, to love them, to love himself and his family. And she taught him that the best thing he could do would teach the people how to love themselves by taking care of themselves. This would happen around making and baking challah. They would add, they would stir, they would knead, and they would braid, and they would put it in the oven. They would set the timer, and when the timer went off, they would have challah. Oh, he loved it. He didn't know if he could ever separate the act of making challah with the smell of challah or the taste of it. All he knew was that grandma's challah was the one he wanted to have for the rest of his life. Well, time went by. His father lived to be 120 years, and when his father died, he became king. By that time, of course, grandma was gone. He did, however, have her recipe, And so at the very first moment that he could, he showed up at the palace kitchen and he called out for the royal chef, "Royal chef, royal chef." And who appeared but the royal chef? And he said, "Yes, your majesty, what can I do for you?" And the king said, "I would like a challah like my grandmother made." "Of course, I would be glad to do that for you. Your majesty, I have the recipe." "I," king. He got it, and he handed it to the chef. It was yellowed with age and spattered with ingredients, but it was that same recipe that his grandma had used. And so the chef tried. The king had asked him, "You be sure not to leave anything out." And the chef tried. He really did. He added, he stirred, he kneaded, he braided, he put it in the oven, he set the timer. And when the timer went off, he took out a challah that looked perfect. And he handed it to the king. The king, of course, asked, "Did you leave anything out?" And the chef said, "No, I did it exactly according to the recipe." So the king was excited. After all, now he could have some of Grandma's challah again. And so he ripped off a piece and they said the blessing together, and the king chewed it slowly to savor the taste. But the taste wasn't there. "This is not the challah that my grandma made. You left something out." "No, your majesty, I didn't." "I'm sorry, but you must have." So the king went on to another chef, and then another, and another, and another, until finally he was out of chefs. And then he went to the people, asking them to please help him. Oh, they tried. They really tried. And you have to give them credit. But none of them were able to make the challah taste like his grandma had. And so the king became very sad. And a sad king is not a pretty sight. So one day, when he was just feeling sorry for himself, he was walking outside the palace, and along came a little girl who looked at him and said, "Your Majesty, what is it?" He said, "A challah, little girl." "Challah? Challah's supposed to make you smile with excitement and shiver. Makes challah?" "Oh yes, she makes the best challah." "Well, may I meet her?" "Well, sure. I'm on my way there now." So the little girl took the king by the hand, and they went through the dark but not too scary woods. And she told him stories too. Everyone loves stories. And when they got to Grandma's house, she immediately raced inside to tell Grandma who was at the door. Grandma was a little surprised. Kings don't come by her neighborhood that often. But she raced out to see him, and she said, "Oh, Your Majesty, I wasn't expecting you. What can I do for you?" "Well, your granddaughter tells me that you make the best challah." "Oh, I think she's just a little partial." "Well, that may be, but I was partial to my grandma's challah, too." "Oh, how nice. But what is it I can do for you?" "Well, I was wondering, if you could make my grandma's challah recipe for me." "Oh, no, I could not do that." "But why not? I'm the king, you know." "Oh, yes, I know. But you see, I'm the grandma, and I never use anyone's recipe but mine." "Oh, I miss my grandma. She used to tell me such wise stories. She told me about my dad when he was the king." "Oh, well, I could tell you some of those. He was my king too, you know." "You could?" "Oh, sure, come on. Maybe if you helped me, we could make the challah together." "Oh, sure. That would be, I could do that." So they went inside, the king, the grandma, and the little girl, and together they made that challah. They added, they stirred, they kneaded, they braided, and they told each other stories. And the king asked this question, "Excuse me, but you knew my dad, and he was a good king. Why?" And the grandma answered, "Why? Well, that's because he loved his people, and he listened to them, and he taught them to love themselves, to take care of themselves. That's what it takes, you know." "Oh, I do believe that my grandma told me the very same thing." "Well, thank you very much. But wait," she said, "we haven't tried the challah.
I think it's ready. And so when she took the challah out of the oven and ripped off a piece, she handed it to the king, and he said, "But I've been watching very carefully, and you didn't do, nor did I, do anything differently. Why should it taste different than all the rest?" She said, "Why don't you try it, Your Majesty? You'll make something." Well, the king was, of course, happy to learn something new, so he said, "Well, okay. And I want to thank you for going out of your way." So he ripped off a piece of challah and he handed some to her, and he handed some to the little girl, and together they said the blessing. And then the king chewed it and swallowed, and a smile came to his face. He said, "That's it, that's it, that's the challah like my grandma made. How did you do it? What did you do? And everyone else forgot." "Oh," she said, "that's easy. When I made challah for you, Your Majesty, I made it with love, like I make it for my granddaughter. For that's the secret ingredient." The end. Shabbat Shalom. We turn now to page 9 in our service as we brought for Elena.
Aleinu neshabeach Adon hakol, Ateinu aliyosem reishi, shelo asanu kikoyar asot, shelo samanu kemishpechot adama, shelo samu chelchinu kahem, v'kol aleinu kechol avonam, אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שנאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
May be seated. Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us. And so, those who died in this day, and I read the names. If you have another of Dave Bowler, as well as those who died at the season in years past whose yard-sites we observe on the Shabbat. Jack Crawley, Hyman Isidore, Arthur Kalins, Esther Kimmel, Barbara Loeb, Sidney Marcus, James McGonigal, Jeffrey Pavel, Abraham Rosenberg, Simon Schnepper, Bernie Schwartz, Morris Steinberg, Bessie Steinberg, Jan Stern, Mark Strumwasser, and other names we might add at this time.
Stephen Fireman.
Elizabeth Goldstein and Stan Lynn.
So if you're in the period of Shiva, I invite you to rise at this time. Those observing Shloshim, the first 30 days, if you'd like, please rise. Those who are observing a yard site or are in the first year of mourning, please rise. As the whole congregation now rises in comfort and support, we continue with the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlik malchutei, B'chaye kon u'yomei kon u'chaye d'kol beit Yisrael. Ba'agalah v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba v'barach le'olam u'mei maya. Yitbarak v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudashah b'riyachud. Le'ela min kol derchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. D'amiran v'yalma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. V'aseh shalom v'romah. V'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. May be seated. It's my pleasure to have Diane Singer come forward to share some announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. So I have to preface that tonight's challah came from with love. Just saying. Anyway, thank you, Rabbi Nemes Fuller, Cantor Sandy, Herb, Shana for leading tonight's service. Thank you for Lillian for leading us in tonight's blessings. Thank you, Karen and Lindsay, for greeting you, and for our text. And as always, thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. Please join us tomorrow morning at 8:45 for Torah Talk and Bagels, followed by our Simply Shabbat morning service at 10 a.m. Our last meet and greet this summer with Rabbi Nemes Fuller is Tuesday evening, August 23rd at 7 p.m. It will be held in the Tapestry Room. Light refreshments will be served. Hopefully, if you've not had a chance to chat with Rabbi, you'll show up and join us that evening. Our Social Action Justice Committee is sponsoring their annual backpack drive. Donations will be accepted up to the end of August. They're also looking for volunteers to assist at St. Paul's Church in Camden. They do that once a month. I think the next one is August 28th. Chat with Fran Green if you're interested in joining them. And membership for Sisterhood and Men's Club are now being accepted. Please consider joining these two amazing programs. They provide a wide variety of programming inside as well as outside our Addith community. Tonight's oneg will be on the cart. Look for Judy. She'll be wheeling it out in a little bit. So hopefully, hey, have oneg will travel. Here we go. So hopefully you'll stay for a little bit and schmooze with your fellow congregants. And tonight's thought for Shabbat, remember to speak from the heart, because words that come from the heart enter the hearts of others. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Diane.
And for our closing song, we turn to page 11, if you can still see. And if you can't see, just sing. Hava Nashira.